Planning out your work is a very important part of any project you're tackling. Now, our project boat here has been going on for some time, and we recently completed the installation of our stringers, and we are moving forward into laying out, putting back the fuel tank in, rigging pipes and whatnot. Now, you'll notice there's a number of pieces of foam board, just inexpensive foam laying there on the floor. And that is an important part of laying out or planning your work. I find that working with like insulation board type material is a much easier and less expensive alternate to working with marine plywood or Coosa board, much lighter, easier to cut, and pattern and template. So this episode is going to kind of be about laying out or patterning and templating some of the pieces, because as you move from the transom replacement stringer, typically the next obvious part is going to be your floor. Now, if you'll notice in here, we've already got this piece and it is fit quite nice in there. Not too shabby, and your patterns don't have to be perfect, by the way. It's kind of one of those things that there's some room for adjustment. But I wanted to show you how I got there in the first place. Now we're gonna set this one off to the side, and I've actually got some additional tricks to show how to transfer it into a full-size panel. But a lot of you folks that are out there that are new to boat repair, DIYing it, maybe have never templated or patterned, or what my dad called scribing. Maybe there's some different terminology out there, but as you know, I've always got one of the little black Sharpies in my pocket, typical standard fare when you're doing this kind of work, as well as a decent tape measure of some kind. And sometimes when you're starting with something like this, I like to just get in these corners. Say, for example, we've cut this at a basic width. Basically took a measurement there, knocked off a piece from side to side. And you'll notice right away, very hard to kind of get into that corner. So you're like, well, you know what? Let's just go ahead and just kind of knock those corners off, or radius or radii them a bit. And that's the nice thing. If you're working with $150 a sheet marine plywood or $250, $300 a sheet Coosa, it can be nerve-wracking. You know, it's kind of nervous to like be cutting this stuff. And you'll notice I've just got a strip here. There's no reason in running a full-length, full-size piece. Also important, you'll notice I got an arrow on here for orientation to help you kind of work your way through this. Now, again, first off, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome you. My name is Joe Buskins. This is our family's boat shop. I'm a second-generation professional boat builder and a 100-ton licensed captain. This is our project boat, and this is our 29-footer that we custom built and designed here in our family's boat shop, and we run in our charter business during the summer months. So welcome, everybody. So here we go. We're going to jump right into this. Now, if you've got a bandsaw, that's awesome. We've got one here in the shop. It doesn't require anything super big, super fancy. But let's just get started. Knock those corners off a bit. I'm just gonna leave that thing running. See, we already made a little progress there. We're walking our way in a little closer. Now I've noticed it's quite tight here on the sides. A lot of times you can just use the hull of the boat. I generally try to get this thing fairly even across, and I like to just lay the marker right against the gunnels there. You can kind of scribe and shape. I'm going to do the same thing over here on this other side. I can see that it's tight right here on this corner. There's kind of a gap. I don't know if y'all can see that. The camera will pick it up. There's a bit of a gap right there, but it's tight right here. So why don't we focus on that little bit. We're just going to scribe it. Here we go. We're going to try to run through this as fast as possible. And y'all, please forgive me. Cold and flu season, and I've been under the weather for a few days, so the voice is kind of shot there, but y'all hang in there and bear with me if you don't mind. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to cut inside the line a little bit on this one. We're already looking better and better, folks. And we may be bumping, you'll notice, may surprise you, and we've had a lot of questions, people that have been following the channel. This area, only this area of this boat, you can see on the outside here, it's kind of got a kick out. Only this area is cored. This is actually just solid fiberglass, but it's only about, oh, say 3/8 of an inch or so thick. This area has got 2 layers of 3/4 inch Coosa reinforcing it. But you'll notice it's kind of, as we're fitting this in, large gap there, no gap there. So a lot of times what we might do is I will use that magic marker again and say, for example, at its widest point right there, so we've got about 3/4 of an inch gap, I'm gonna just use my finger and run it against the hull and say, okay, we're gonna set it right at 0. And then as we move across, your finger can kind of capture that gap. Can be tricky getting these camera angles there, folks. All right, we're probably going to take a little bit more off of here as well as this comes in. You're just going to have to scribe it and shape it. Same over here, maybe on this side, we'll take a little bit off right in the corner once again. This is a skill that's not that hard to master, but a lot of people don't realize how much time templating and pattern making can save you in the long run. So I'm going to knock this off, give you a rough overview, and then we're actually going to go back to the piece that we've already fitted, and we're going to show you how we make the side pieces. But let's just see how close we can get real quick like. How close we're getting here. All right, so a little more off of these corners. Wherever it's making contact or hitting is typically where you want to trim and shape it. This may be the last cut we make on this demonstration piece. All right. Oh yeah. As you can see there, folks, we're not shooting for perfection on this right at the moment. Just trying to give you a quick overview of how we can get a square piece to fit in an irregular shape pretty quickly. Now, generally from here, what you're doing is you're just going and you're looking for gaps. Wherever there's gaps, you leave those. Wherever it's making contact, you may come in there and trim it or shave it a little bit. Now, a lot of times you can get down to finesse tools, like sometimes just using a sanding block and knocking some corners off, or a lot of times a little bit of a bevel kind of undercutting under the edge is what you need to get a really nice fit. And it's as simple as that. If you've never done it, sometimes having grown up here in a boat shop, you take things for granted that my dad taught me, but he called it scribing, and that's a great way to then pattern and template. So we're gonna put this one off to the side, and we may use this piece for another pattern or template in future. Now this is the one that I had worked on, and we spent a little more time finessing and getting into shape and getting it a lot closer. Now sometimes people that are used to doing very fine woodwork, for example, like trim carpentry or woodwork, they may not be used to some of the gaps or spaces that are acceptable. But when you're working with fiberglass, like, it's not a big deal if you've got 1/8 of an inch of a gap or 3/16 of an inch here and there, as long as the majority of it is fairly tight. And then that's what something like a structural putty from Fiberglass Warehouse or other structural putties, especially a vinyl ester, is going to be a much stronger one for bonding. And that's exactly what this kind of material is made for, is coming back in. And when you built this out of plywood or Coosa, you would just backfill that and you would close up that gap or seam and then fiberglass it in. So we're looking pretty good right here. That's going to be pretty snug and tight, and I would say for most instances that is an acceptable tolerance. So then what do you do for the edges? If you're trying to transfer this, you're gonna use some smaller pieces, just rip down, oh, those are probably 3 or 4 inches wide, and you can lay those right along the gunnels. And you can see, like, for example, there's a bit of a gap there, and it widens and tightens, and you're like, well, same deal. So we've got a gap right there. That would mean it's touching a little bit up in here. So let's just run down the edge and scribe that a bit. And don't really need to take a whole lot off of there. And I did put a mark on here where it's set, just so you kind of got a reference point where you can put it back in the same spot over and over again. Now you can see that's tightened up pretty good, and that's under 1/8 of an inch comfortably, not a problem at all. And so the next tool in our arsenal would be a heat gun. And y'all forgive me, folks, I have been under the weather for several days. I may not be operating at 100% today. I know it's kind of cold and flu season. Probably a lot of you folks at home, maybe you're binge watching some YouTube, learning how to get after your boat project if you're not feeling well. That's kind of what I've been doing the last couple days. But here we go. Which brings me to, I'd love to hear what y'all are working on at home. I know it's cold in a lot of parts of the world, but we've been having a lot of folks from overseas, maybe in the southern hemisphere, that have been watching that it's their summertime, especially folks from Australia and other parts of the world. All right, and we're just going to use that hot glue, and that's going to help us get our angle. We want to be sure this is tied over there. It's looking pretty good. All right, we're gonna let that set. We want to be sure to welcome everybody and thank y'all so much for tuning into the channel. Now's a good time to ask you if you're enjoying the channel and the content. Maybe a little thing to you guys, but it greatly helps. The YouTube algorithm helps us do this kind of work. If you go ahead and just hit that little subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, like, share, comment, let us know what kind of projects you're working on. And again, we want to thank you, heartfelt, sincere thank you for your support of the channel. It means a lot to us. Okay, so let's jump over here to this other side while that is kicking off. And I'm probably gonna have to make this video fairly short, folks, because I can feel and hear my voice going as we speak. Now that one actually is pretty darn good. You can see there's a little bit of it's touching right there, maybe a very shallow gap, maybe a little contact, a little bit tighter right in here. It's very minor. Now you don't necessarily, again, need a bandsaw, although it is a really nice addition to the shop if you can manage a way or figure out a way to get one that you can use. That would be a big help. But a saber saw, a jigsaw, a utility knife, sometimes you can just use a sanding block for small amounts. See, just like that. Able to take off just a smidge. All right, here we go. Again, using our reference corner there. And that is looking pretty decent. Again, folks, remember, it does not have to be absolutely perfect. And sometimes people get hung up on that, and there's lots of ways to make this work and still be plenty good. If you're within 1/8 of an inch, you're going to be quite all right. Same deal. Probably need to upgrade my hot glue rig here. This one may not be the best, exactly industrial grade, but again, you don't have to have the best of everything to do this. We'll try to put a link to everything we're using here on the channel. Got a very nice Amazon store for y'all's convenience with pictures and descriptions. Everything we're using or something comparable should be there. And then also, important to remember that if you need any fiberglass supplies, Fiberglass Warehouse has a very good Fish Bump TV discount code for all of our viewers, so can save you some substantial amount of money and help you move forward with some of these projects. Now, typically that hot glue works along pretty fast. Right now, it's fairly mild for the winter time. We're having kind of a warm spell right here. We'll see if that'll set real quick for us. And you can imagine where we're going from here once this sets. You get these angles, and I think just that fast. I want to be careful with it. I think everybody gets the general idea. Just come right over to your Coosa board or your plywood. Run that out to the edges. Run it to the back. Just like so. We'll try to maximize the width, because sometimes there will be little variations on the angles. Boats are not like most home construction projects. A lot of times they are not symmetrical. There can be variations from one side to the other, and it would just be a simple matter at this point to mark a Sharpie line around the sides, up the front, then transfer that to your Coosa, and we've got our first panel in play. Now, something else you want to consider now that we've got that material out of the way is laying out your pipe work for your rigging. Now, this particular boat, we're going to be drilling a hole right through the stringer right here. That's a 4-inch diameter pipe. I have found that is a 4-inch OD. That works really nice overall. That's what we put in our 29-footer when we built it. We put 2 of them, in fact, and you could theoretically run a pair of them forward, and this is going to have one coming up through the floor, which will make a little templater pattern. Again, much safer and easier to do it on your inexpensive foam board versus your Coosa. So same here. You'll notice, even getting ready for putting our fuel tank in, little templates and patterns that you can transfer. And we call this a dry fit or a mock up, and it helps tremendously, especially again if you've never done this before. It can be a little bit intimidating. Now, typically I would recommend going back with whatever the original manufacturer put in the boat, but sometimes you can upgrade it a little bit, so you can go from a 3-inch pipe to a 4-inch pipe, or you could even theoretically put 2 in there. But it's a real good idea to plan your work ahead and think about, how is your fuel lines going to get fore and aft? How are your live well hoses going to get fore and aft? Your steering controls, which side are they coming in on? Where are you going to put your batteries? Where are you going to put your water tanks if you're going to have some? Even as far as console placement. That's one of the really cool things about redoing your boat, is a lot of times there's a little wiggle room there. The factory builds these for appeal to the masses, where sometimes, like say for example, the way we fish over the stern of the boat a little more, and I actually wanted more aft cockpit space, so we moved the console slightly forward of what you would see traditionally. So it's kind of just a personal matter thing. Now, I'm excited, again, because we've been under the weather, my voice is going, we're going to make this fairly short, but stay tuned, because we are going to be rapidly moving into foam flotation, floors, fuel tank installation. And I'd love to hear what you folks at home are working on and get feedback from everyone. It's Captain Joe here, my son Logan, Fish Bump TV, Island Marine Charters. We want to thank y'all sincerely for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.